Hello guys, in this video we are going to learn about creating classes and using classes in Python. Now we all know that Python is an object-oriented programming language, and in object-oriented programming language, a class is an extensible program code template for creating objects, providing initial values of states and implementations of behavior. Now, this definition of class, you may think that, what is this? So let me give you an example. Suppose you want to create a class or you want to save some data for a person. Now, person has some attribute, for example, first name, last name. And for example, you want to print the person's name. So a class can also have member functions or member methods, right? So we are going to take this example of person and we are going to create a person class and we are going to give the attribute to this class as first name and last name, and we will try to print the person's name. Okay, so let's see how we can create a class in Python. Now, in Python, the class is created by using the word class itself, and then you give the name to the class. In our case, we want to give the name to the class is person, so we will give this person name to the class, and then this colon comes. And inside this class, you can define member functions or member variables. Now, how you can define member functions in a class, you just need to give, for example, I want to print the name, first name and last name of the person. I can create a method to print this. So I can create a function like this: print full name, for example. This is the function name. But we all know that function, whenever we want to define a function, we use def in front of a function, right? And then we can pass some argument here. Now, whenever we use a function inside a class, the first argument we give to the member function is a keyword called self. And this self is nothing but a pointer, or the self points to the class itself. Okay, so this class, whenever we create an instance of a class, which I'm going to show you how you can create an instance or object of a class, this self point to the object of the class. So just wait for a while and you will understand. And then you pass the name of the argument. So for example, first name and last name. Okay, then colon, and then you can give the definition to the class. So for example, I want to set the value of first name and last name. So what I can do is I can use the same keyword self to call the first name variable and last name variable of the class. This should be last, right? And then we use a dot separator to call them. So for example, we want to set the first name, we just use self, and first name is equal to first name. And then in a similar way, we can just define the second variable, or setting the second variable, which is last name. So self dot last name is equal to last name. Okay. it's better to rename this function as set full name. Okay, so what this function is doing, it's setting the first name and last name to the variables in a class or member variables in the class, which are first name and last name. So whatever argument you pass here, first name and last name, will be passed to the member variable of the class, which are also first name and last name. Okay, now we have already created this class, and now we are going to create a second member function to print this first name and last name or full name. Okay, so we will define a second function called print full name, and this will not take any argument, and we are just going to return, or we are just going to print the first name and last name. Okay, so we are going to print here first name. So to call any member function or member variable of a class, you just need to use self, and self just indicates that it's a member variable or member of a class. Okay, so always use self, and we are going to print self.firstName, which is the first name, and then we can just give a little space here to separate them, first name and last name, and then you can just take the last name and print it. Now, in order to create an instance of a class, so how you can create an instance of a class? This is just a definition of the class, right? We have defined the definition of the class, right? Now, in order to create the instance of a class so that we can use this class, by creating the instance of the class. So, whenever you want to end the class and you want to execute in this class, just remember that you start from the corner here, right? So, and don't forget about indentation in this class declaration. So when you start with no indentation here, then you are in the new line and you are outside the class. Okay. Now, in order to create a instance of the class or object of the class, we can just define the object name. For example, person name. So this is the object name or instance name of a class we want to give, and then is equal to the name of the class, and then these brackets. Okay, and this will create the object of person class with a name person name. Okay, so let's try to run the program and let's see if it contains any error or not. Save. Okay, it doesn't contain any error, so it's running fine, but we want to use the member function of the class. So how we can use this member function of a class? We can use the member function of a class using this instance of the class or object of the class. Okay, so just take the object of the class, and in the next line we just copy the object of the class dot, and then we can see there are two options which are member functions of the class: print full name and set name. So I'm going to take set name of the class function. So this is the member function of a person class, and we are accessing this member function using the instance or object of the class. Okay, and in between we give dot separator so that now this instance can call the member functions or member variable of the class. And now we can set the first name and last name. For example, programming is the first name and knowledge is the last name. Okay, so we have set the first name and last name of the person, and just remember that this is used as a default. So this will be automatically taken by your class, and these are the important uh, two important arguments which you need to pass, and this will be taken automatically. Okay, so self is by default for a member function invisible, in a sense that you just need to pass the other arguments except for the self argument. So first name we passed as programming and last name we passed as knowledge. So this is setting the first name and last name of a person. Now in order to print this name, we can once again use the instance or object of a class dot. We can call the second function of a class called print name, which takes no argument, right? And now let's try to save the program and run this. So run this, and what saying? It's saying that this member function which you are calling, which is print full name, doesn't have any argument, which is zero argument, right? Takes zero argument, but one was given, right? So I intentionally leave the self in this function so that we can see this error. So always remember, you have to at least pass self whenever you define a member function in a class. So even if it doesn't take any parameter or argument, you need to pass self to a member function. Okay? Now when I save the program and run it, it will run fine, right? And it prints the name programming space knowledge which I wanted to print, right? So always remember few things. Whenever you define a member function in a class, always use self as a first argument and then give your rest of the argument. And even if your function or member function doesn't take any argument, you must pass at least one argument which is self. Okay? Once what is self? Self is just a pointer to the class instance. So this self is pointing to this person name, and this is called class instance. And whenever we create the class instance, it will assign this person here at the place of self, and then name will be set as person name, which is this instance dot first name, person name dot last name, and then whenever we call this function, it will print person name dot first name, person name dot last name. So in this way, you can use or you can create classes in Python. There is a lot more in defining and creating or using classes in Python. This is just starting or how to create a class in Python. So I will show you how to use other functionalities in class in later videos, and hopefully you understood the concept of the class, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please rate, comment and subscribe, and bye for now.